Tommaso Tiraboschi from Fondazione Adapt, Italy.
I am Matteo Colombo from Fondazione Adapt, Italy.
In Italy, the continuing education context calls upon a large number of actors involved. Initiatives from the national education system, companies, social partners, European Union or specific funds offer chances of learning and training for any situation, especially for employed, unemployed and inactive people. The participation rate of adults aged 25-74 in education and training activities has been for several years distant from the European value. Then in 2021 the trend changed and began to rise, placing it close to the corresponding European average. About this point, it's interesting to focus on three aspects of the Italian case in terms of equity in access to training for all social categories. First, considering the age, in Europe, and especially in Italy, the rate of training participation is inversely proportional to age group. This means that it is the younger population who participate more in training. Second, considering the educational level of the population, it's the Achilles heel of Italian case. In Italy, there is a low level of education in general, which is directly related to access to continuing education. It is a ballast that weighs on access to lifelong learning. For example, in 2021, the share of Italians aged 25-64 with a secondary school diploma was 62.7%, 16 percentage points lower than EU. Third, for the employed people, the degree of qualification is another crucial point. Learning opportunities are 3 times greater for high-skilled than for low-skilled workers at the European level. In Italy, participation levels are low for both categories. Thus, categories that already have good professional qualifications have greater access to continuing education. The Italian National Report focused on the automotive sector, an ecosystem that has a globally recognized identity thanks to a combination of different factors, including technology and style, performance, functionality, and even arriving at the development of territories specifically dedicated to it. In 2019, the automotive sector reached a turnover of 93 billion euros with 5,700 companies and 250,000 employees, 7% of the entire Italian manufacturing workforce. It's a sector particularly interested by the dual transition. Until the mid-20th century, adult education in Italy was provided mainly by private initiative, for example from companies or from social care institutions like parish or similar. From that time onwards, it has begun to also progressively involve the social partners, the state and the regions. Nowadays, these different parts operate in a fragmented way. It lacks a system in which the tasks and responsibilities of those involved in continuing education are defined. There isn't a coordinating superstructure that can set shared and strategic objectives capable of charting a direction. The state and the regions promote training through a public system of active labor market policies. At the same time, the state is committed to promoting closer forms of collaboration between training institutions and companies to create adult learning paths aimed not only at young people but also at adult workers, both employed and unemployed. Specific rights and tools come from company bargaining and collective bargaining about training for workers, for example, subjective right to training. Sector-specific interprofessional funds for training activities created by the social partners are gaining more and more importance and are becoming essential for every company. Although the Italian case is therefore characterized by a lack of single and structured system over training and adult education, there are multiple tools dedicated to this function and which contribute to a greater awareness of its importance on the part of all the actors involved, and which, in the latest surveys, it shows increasing interest and participation. In Europe, competencies and education in general of citizens are recognized as basic foundations for the economic growth and success in general terms, and for the well-being of a society that is educationally competitive and inclusive with respect to labor dynamics. In this frame, continuing education and lifelong learning in Italy have seen a primary role played by both institutional actors and businesses. with substantial funding and projects aimed at raising the quality of training and its diffusion. Industrial relations, through collective bargaining, operates through union and employer representation with respect to regulation in the area of vocational training of workers. Today in Italy, there is an increase in the role of trade unions and industrial relations in the design, implementation and monitoring of various interventions and programs, often with the task of guaranteeing the training itself in terms of the qualification and retraining of the workers.
A mixed method approach was used to understand the role of social partners in promoting adult learning. Semi-structured interviews and a focus group were conducted with representatives of workers and employers, training institutions, companies, and workers operating or having as their main reference the automotive sector. The analysis conducted revealed how adult learning is considered fundamental by all stakeholders. Certainly, the role of social partner is decisive, and the attention devoted by them to the topic has been growing in recent years, both at the level of national collective bargaining, where the most significant innovation for the automotive sector were in 2016 the introduction of the subjective right to training for all employees, and in 2021 the Metaprendo platform for the management and registration of distance learning carried out, and also at the level of company bargaining. Still sporadic are the forms of integration between policies dedicated to adult learning designed by social partners and public policies. The introduction of the subjective right to training is also particularly important because, as can be seen in this chart, usually people in Italy who access adult learning are younger workers who already have high skills. In contrast, the subjective right requires that all workers take at least 24 hours of training in a 3-year period. Companies' perception about adult learning vary. Much depends on size class. Many large companies in Italy have devised corporate academies that run adult learning courses dedicated to their employees. Others, which are smaller in size, rely on external partnership, such as with the education system. It is usually smaller companies that are unable to manage on their own the bureaucratic burdens required to assess public resources, as well as resources from social partner funds for adult learning. In light of the evidence gathered from the research, some policy suggestions have been identified. Above all, what is lacking in Italy is an industrial policy, especially one dedicated to the automotive sector, and one that knows how to indicate objectives, establish stages to reach them, and encourage the development processes that are not reduced to the mere provision of incentives, but that know how to integrate different resources, policies for research and development, policies for innovation, training policies, and labor policies. Also, bilateral commissions for adult learning are very important. Jointly participated by employers and workers should be developed, especially for the skill forecast and to promote access to tools and resources available and sometimes little known at the local level. The joint interprofessional funds and the new skill funds are important tools for the training and reskilling of Italian workers, in which the social partners can invest even more in terms of training design. Especially important is then to promote forms of collaboration with public policies as well. Crucial is still to set unambiguous standards at the national level to facilitate access to the adult learning tools and overcome some heterogeneities that still persist. In conclusion, attention to adult learning in Italy is increasing. The role of social partners is decisive in overcoming some critical issues in the national context: territorial fragmentation, accessibility and inclusion for all workers, while what needs to be improved is the connection with public policies, which to date is complex in the absence of an industrial policy, which is the real weakness of the Italian system.